Welcome to Brainfluence. I'm Roger Dooley. Every Brainfluence guest is special, but today's might be a little more special than most. Marshall Goldsmith is a world-renowned executive coach, author, and thought leader in the field of leadership development. He's worked with CEOs and senior executives from Fortune 500 companies and has been a professor of management at Dartmouth's Tuck School for decades. He's the #1 New York Times bestselling author who has written or edited 40 books. That's right, 40. These include Mojo, Triggers, and What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Marshall has got a new venture that I know will be exciting to anyone who wants to learn from his long history of thinking and writing. Welcome to the show, Marshall.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. Very happy to be here.
Well, Marshall, half the people I encounter on LinkedIn call themselves a coach of some kind. And I think the other half are marketers who promise to get these coaches more business, at least judging by the constant stream of direct messages that I get pitching various services. Can you explain what a coach is? What does a coach do?
Well, the answer to that question is in one way, no, I can't. Let me tell you what I mean. There's so many different definitions of what a coach is. There are some predominant types. One type would be the International Coaching Federation, ICF coach. Traditionally, the coach uses Socratic coaching methods. They're certified to do this. And it's what you could call inside-out coaching. The coaching I developed is called stakeholder-centered coaching, which involves interviewing everybody, getting confidential feedback, learning from this stuff, and then following up and trying to get better. That is more of a kind of outside in. You're learning from everything from the outside coming inside to you. I don't think any of these are better or worse. They're just quite different. So there are many different types of coaching. You've also hit on another point. There's too many coaches. Right now, the average coach makes very little money. And there are too many coaches. The unemployed people used to call themselves realtors. Well, now they call themselves life coaches. So there's too many coaches. There's not enough business for coaching. And so the coaches really need to differentiate themselves. I'm in a business of, I also provide advice. So there are a lot of other coaches, more like me, who not only use the coaching process, but they have technical expertise in a certain area. For example, I was ranked #1 leadership thinker in the world, so I can provide advice on leadership.
What's the difference between a coach and a consultant?
I never get into semantic arguments. You know what I tell my clients? I don't really care. I just want to help you have a better life, and you can call it whatever you want to call it.
That's fair enough, I think, Marshall. Today, are you seeing any recurring themes in the executives that you're coaching? Any problems that seem to be standing out today more than others?
Well, I wouldn't say it's just true today. It's just true with who I coach. You have to realize I do not coach a random sample of people. And typically, I don't coach young people. Most of my clients are CEOs or could be CEOs of multi-billion-dollar corporations. Or sometimes I do work for nonprofits for free, but they're still huge organizations. So, yeah, I've been the coach of the President of the World Bank and CEO of Ford, Pfizer, Glaxo, all these huge companies. Well, what are the typical problems? I was interviewed in the Harvard Business Review and asked, what's the #1 problem of everyone you've coached? And my answer was winning too much. Winning too much. Important, we want to win. Meaningful, we want to win. Critical, we want to win. Trivial, we want to win. And not worth it, we want to win anyway. See, the people I coach are winners. And it's hard for winners not to win. Now, here's the problem. As you get promoted in life, you got to quit winning. You got to quit making winning about you being the smartest person, the best ideas. You got to make winning about them. This is very easy in theory. It's very difficult in practice. I'll give you a couple of funny examples. One, you have a hard day at work. You come home. Your wife, husband, or partner is there. And your wife, husband, or partner says, oh, I had such a hard day today. I had such a tough day. If we're not careful, you know what we say? You had a hard day. You had a hard day. You have any idea what I had to put up with today? You think you had a hard day? We're so competitive, we have to prove we're more miserable than people we live with. I gave this example to my class at the Dartmouth Tuck School. Young guy raised his hand. He said, I did that last week. I asked him what happened. He said, my wife looked at me and said, honey, you just think you've had a hard day. It is not over.
That's great. And I think the whole sort of competitive thing, clearly anybody who reaches high executive or CEO level is a competitive person. I mean, to some degree, they have to have that sense of doing the things, working hard and so on, whatever it takes to succeed. But
Right.
I think what you're pointing out is there's a transition where once you reach that level, it's much less about competing with other people and more about supporting people, making them look good.
Exactly. One of my clients said, for the great achiever, it might be all about me, but for the great leader, it's all about them. And it is very tough to make this transition from a great achiever to a great leader. It's not just hard for CEOs of big companies, it's hard for founders. You're a founder of a company. One of the biggest challenges is scale the company. Why the founder? They got to be involved in everything. They can't let go. It's hard. It is very difficult when you are a very smart and a very competitive person not to win all the time and try to be right. Peter Drucker was a great mentor of mine, said, our mission on earth is to make a positive difference, not to prove how smart we are and not to prove how right we are.
That's a great lesson for anyone. Your new venture involves artificial intelligence, AI, which is, of course, a gigantic topic, has been for the last year or two now. Before we get onto that project, what are you seeing CEOs and executives wrestling with in regard to AI right now?
It's a major challenge. Most people have no clue how challenging this is. I've spent hundreds of hours on my own AI bot, and it's a lot of work. To do this, it's like anything else. To do it is easy. To do it right is hard. To do this right takes a whole lot of work. I think most corporations have no idea what this amounts to. You've got to have you can't just delegate this to tech people. For example, if that AI bot is speaking for your corporation, you need somebody that understands customers. You need somebody that understands products. Somebody's got to manage this thing, and people can ask thousands and thousands of questions. You also need to have guardrails, because if this thing goes off the track, you can easily humiliate your company. So it's a lot of work to do this right. I love it. I've had a great experience working with it myself. I'm a very unusual person. See, I have 4 qualities that make this unusual for me. One is I've got a lot of content. Now, not only have I done a lot of books, I've fed 3 million words into my AI bot. And part of it, I use other AI bots to train it. I'll ask another AI bot, if it can't answer the question, what would Marshall Goldsmith say about this? They'll all give me an answer, sometimes good, sometimes bad. I take the best parts and put it in my bot. The others I ignore. Well, it's a lot of work to train this thing. 1, you have to have content. 2, you have to have a lot of followers. Somebody's got to care. Now, I have 1.5 million followers just on LinkedIn. Well, if you don't have a lot of followers, you got an AI bot, you give away all you know. Okay, and who cares? No one cares what you know. So you need to have a lot of content. 3, you probably need to give it away. I'm 75. I want to give away everything I know to everyone in the world for free as best I can. So I'm just doing this out of the goodness of my heart. I just want to give everything away. There's no cost to this. There's no upsell. There's no trick. Some things, it's free. Well, it's not really free. You get a special button. You get to go over here and pay. It's no trick here. And then 4, I have some very generous people paying for this. At Fractal Analytics, I was a coach of their founders. They're really nice people. They're from India. I'm their guru. And guru just means teacher in Hindi. And they're basically donating this. 8 engineers working on this. That's a lot of work. I enjoy it.
Well, that's great. And since we've transitioned into discussing your bot, we should say that it is called MarshallBot, and it is at marshallgoldsmith.ai. And I've played with it a little bit, and it's very good. I suspect that your coaching business won't be impacted one whit. It's sort of like, well, just because you've got a Rolling Stones CD doesn't mean you wouldn't see them live in person if you had the opportunity to. And I guess it's the same for you.
Look, the people I coach, if they want to ask me a question, they're going to ask me. They have money. They're not going to talk to a computer bot. They're going to ask me. On the other hand, look, what % of all humans can I coach anyway? Tiny. So this is for the millions of people I can't coach. The millions of people speak languages I don't speak. And so this is my kind of a give back, try to make the world a little bit better place.
Explain a little bit about what you began that process, Marshall, you explaining what goes in. So you put presumably all of your books in and all of your articles in. Then you said you tested it with other AIs asking questions or asking questions of those other AIs. Mm-hmm. And I actually ran a little experiment like that myself. I ask your Marshall bot a question about customer experience and employee experience, which is more important, which is kind of a trick question,
Yeah.
but just to sort of give it a little puzzle. And it came back with sort of an expected answer of
Yeah.
both are important and so on. I asked Claude, which is sort of my preferred AI, although I use ChatGPT as well.
Yeah.
And it came back with a little more nuanced answer about the importance of employee experience and so on. And it was kind of interesting. They both neither said, okay, here's the clear winner, but the answers were a little bit different. So I love the idea that you used other AIs to train your AI.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's a good example. Now, my daughter asked my computer bot a question. She tried to trick it. So my daughter is she's a PhD from Yale. She's an endowed professor at Vanderbilt. So she's smart. She's going to trick it. She said, how is your coaching related to utilitarian philosophy? Well, yeah, that's a pretty profound question. I don't know what utilitarian philosophy even is. It studies utilitarian philosophy. It studies my coaching. It figures out how my coaching is related to utilitarian philosophy and answers it pretty much as I would have answered it had I done this study, because it knows me very well, in about 5 seconds.
So where's it getting the additional information? Like I suspect that the terms utilitarian philosophy never occurred in your writings personally. So where does it get this third-party knowledge?
Never mention it. No, it studies the internet. And what it does, though, every computer bot is biased. Now, your question was a pretty generic question. And also, I'm not the world's expert on the answer to your question anyway. So by definition, we'll give you a pretty generic answer. So mine, by the way, I'm like you, I love the Claude bot more than the others. So, my answer and the Claude bot answer would probably be reasonably similar, I would imagine. On the other hand, a more nuanced question for me might be about coaching, leadership, and all that. Then you would kind of get my answer as opposed to a generic answer. For example, what is stakeholder-centered leadership, that kind of stuff. Then you get my answer because that's me talking. Now, very interesting, though, what it does is it studies the internet, but then it studies me. It understands me. Every computer bot is biased, by the way. Every bot is biased. Let me tell you what I mean. The obvious example is the Google bot Gemini, which is just ridiculously biased by left-wing San Francisco politics. And I don't care about politics one way or the other, but as you read about it, it imploded. They had to shut down the video part because it was so ridiculous, right? It just imploded. Well, every computer bot is biased. My computer bot is biased. Let me explain what I mean by that. You ask it a question like, what is leadership? Well, my definition is my old mentor, Dr. Paul Hersey. Leadership is working with and through others to achieve objectives. The key word is the word others. There's nothing magic about that definition. It's just one I like. Well, is it biased? There are 100 definitions of leadership. I give you my answer. It's biased by what? Me. I am the bias. Well, the nice thing about my computer bot is at least you know who the bias is. It does its best to give you an answer that it feels is the answer I would give. Now, I'm not saying I learned this from Dr. Hersey. You ask me semantic questions. You know what he told me? Never get into definitional arguments. What is coaching? What is advising? Blah, blah, blah. There's a million answers. There's not God up in the sky saying this is the right answer. Well, I'm not saying my computer bot is right. It's just my answer. I'm a Buddhist. Buddhists said only do what I teach what works for you. See, my bot gives you a lot of different levels of answer. If it works for you, do it. If it doesn't work for you, ignore it. Let's say you get 8 suggestions and only 2 of them work for you. You're 2 ahead. It costs 5 seconds and it's free.
Marshall, I have a quick little test. I hope you'll experiment, perhaps. I hope you'll participate.
Sure.
I asked your bot a question, which really is kind of a coaching question, and I thought I would compare its answer to your answer. I think it's probably going to turn out fine, but if that's okay with you, I'll give you the question.
Sure,
And
what is it?
basically, I asked what you would advise a CEO who came to you and said, gee, I want to be thought of as a thought leader as well as a CEO, and without any additional facts about the state of the company and so on.
Sure.
What would you tell that person?
Well, the first thing I'd say is thought leader at what, right? So you need to come up with some definition of what you mean by thought leader. Then I would learn from what what I'd call experts like you, learn as much as you can. I'd write about the topic. I would start communicating about the topic and really focus on being the world's expert on that topic, whatever it is. And the other advice I would have is don't pick a topic that's too broad. Pick a topic that's narrow enough where you can be a true expert. Okay, there's some of my thoughts. What did the bot say? I'm curious. I have no idea.
Well, actually, I thought that maybe the bot provided even slightly better advice than real Marshall, because it said first you got to remember that job one is being a CEO of your company,
Of course, yeah.
before you start doing this thought leader stuff. But then the other its other portion of the answer was kind of similar. It points out that being a thought leader can be beneficial for the company too. It, of course, can position your company as forward thinking. But the key is to balance the roles of CEO and thought leader. Talk about delegation, speaking at industry events, then writing articles or books, which you mentioned, participating in discussions that shape the future of the industry. But then again, a reminder, your ultimate goal as CEO is to serve the best interests of your company. So actually, I thought that was pretty sage advice.
Let me give you another example. One of the guys I'm coaching, Dr. Patrick Frias, he's the CEO of Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego. They merged with another hospital. He's going to be the co-CEO. So I asked MarshallBot, well, he said, what's it like to be a co-CEO? There aren't that many co-CEOs, right? KKR has co-CEOs. Mostly it doesn't work. So he said, I asked MarshallBot, what's it like to be a co-CEO? What are the advantages? What are the opportunities? What suggestions you have? The answer was ungodly good. Then it said, what about this one part? Go into more detail. It did. Then he asked me what I thought. The answer was way better than I could have said. Way better. Not even close. I can't. Look, he likes me. I'm a volunteer. I do it for free. Oh, Marshall, your inputs were good too. Face it, my inputs weren't that good. It was way better than me. You see, back to Peter Drucker. We're on earth to make a positive difference, not to be smart and right. This is smarter than I am. I'm not in a contest here. I can't answer the question you gave. Its answer was better than mine. That's okay. I'm not trying to be smarter than this thing. I'm not. I can't answer. I can't answer questions like it can, and I can't answer in the detail in 5 seconds like it can. It's smarter than me. I'm cool with that.
I've been playing with my own little bot just based on my two books, what I found was when I was asked some of the general AIs about what would Roger say about this, it gave answers that were, some of it was invented. You get quotes that were invented, although some of the quotes were better than things I actually said. So that was pretty nice, but they weren't accurate, which is a problem. But I've had people who are talking to me says, "Oh, you wrote this, in chapter 47." And I'm trying to scratch my head, trying to remember what I wrote in chapter 47 and not recalling that particular study that I wrote about or whatever. So, I mean, when you compare our own frail human recall to AI recall, I could see where there's a big difference. And of course, my work product is, a tiny, tiny fraction of the size of yours.
Well, also, this is really not a coaching bot. See, the traditional coaches are trained to ask questions, which is fine. That's okay. And they're not trained to provide advice, which is also, I think, good. My coaches, the stakeholder coaches, basically, you get advice from everyone around you, but they're not predominantly there to give advice. This isn't a coaching bot. It doesn't really ask you questions. It provides knowledge and advice. That's what it's for. So I think it's very complimentary to somebody who's a coach or somebody like that, because look, no offense, they do not have this much knowledge. I mean, I got ranked number one coach and leadership thinker in the world. This has a lot more knowledge than me. So unless somebody's way smarter than me, they can't compete with us.
Of course, that question thing is a key difference, Marshall. If you were coaching somebody in person, you would ask questions to try and tease out more about the particular situation and problem that you're trying to solve or trying to help with. So, it's not quite a full replacement for human, Marshall, but still, from a sort of a generic question, aspect, it's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And here's the other thing, though. It's not in a contest with another person. This is free to people around the world. Poor people can use this. People who speak other languages can use this. people in all sizes, different types of companies. They couldn't afford to hire me. They can do this, right? Well, it's available to everybody for free. So again, it's not a contest. I mean, I have no problem that can answer questions better than I can. That's what I made it for.
So explain about the language piece, Marshall. Like, you can ask it a question and it will respond, say, in Spanish.
For example, let's say I ask my computer bot a question: how can I be happier? Pretty straightforward question. Well, now it's got a multiple language capability. For example, para ser más feliz, es importante centrarse en el desarrollo personal y en la actitud que adoptamos ante la vida. Aquí tienes algunas sugerencias basadas en mis enseñanzas. Primero, enfócate en la gratitud. Well, it goes on and on and on, and it answers the question in Spanish. It answers in Spanish, but it also answers in the Mexican version of Spanish, French, and the Canadian version of French. So it also sometimes answers even in multiple dialects. So, you know, it's my voice.
Right. I've done some video dubbing like that, where I've had a short video that I wanted to do in Spanish or Italian, and it's pretty amazing because it can not only translate the text accurately into something that's sounds very normal and correct in that language, but also make one's mouth match. So It actually looks like you're speaking fluent, whatever you're speaking in, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, we're just on the early cutting edge of this. I think, it's going to get a lot better and a lot easier and a lot cheaper than it is right now. At the moment, it takes quite a bit of processing power to generate those videos, I think, but it's certainly going to get a lot easier. But that's great that not only is your content accessible to everyone, but it's even accessible to them in a language that they can understand as a native. So that's fantastic. Marshall, as you've been working on this, is there any area where so far your MarshallBot is not quite living up to expectations and you're still working to improve it?
Well, when it started, there was a lot more, because I realized I just keep over and over iterating things. And so occasionally it'll still make mistakes on things like, you have to be careful what you put in, because sometimes I like other people's work and I put it in and it refers to them as me. And so it justifiably, the problem it typically has had is me providing the wrong input. If I provide the right input, it tends to be very, very good. I have to be careful at what is the input I'm putting in, because if I don't be careful at what I'm putting in, it could give answers that don't make any sense. And the other thing is, I just need to go back and edit it, because I'm going to have a team of people editing this, because the reality is, for example, I might have written an article that talks about Mary, and Mary says, well, effective delegation is when you yell and scream at people. Okay. What it reads is effective delegation is when you yell and scream at people. So just little subtleties in input questions, you have to be a little bit careful. And what I'm trying to do now is also make it more human, which is, not easy either, because it's not a human, it's a computer. But I'm trying to make it more human. For example, if you ask it, how many languages do you speak? It'll say, oh, I barely speak the American version of English. Or, because I personally can barely speak English.
Right.
It'll ask a question about my grandkids. It'll be a little personal. So why do you wear a green t-shirt every day? So I'm trying to program in it some personal things. Humor is incredibly difficult, though. Humor is incredibly difficult. So this really is not really programmed to have a lot of humor, because that's above my pay grade. On the other hand, it's for content, it's going to be way better than me. It's already way better than me. As you say, there might be questions I could answer a little better than it can, some, but not many. In most cases, it's even the question you ask, I like its answer better than my answer.
That problem with content that you mentioned, as far as picking up the wrong person's quote, that's what I've seen, and that's why where I've run into the most problems in trying to get answers about, say, something that I've said or written, where they'll pick up stuff, like depending on what its knowledge base is, the more stuff you put in there, especially random stuff or stuff from other people, the more likely it is to not really understand who said what and misattribute it or misquote it and do other stuff like that. So, but nevertheless, I think for the sorts of answers that it gives, it seems to be doing a pretty darn good job. You know, if someone's listening to this and thinking, wow, I'm an expert in some topic, I would love to create my own bot that has everything I know in it, but does a pretty good job of delivering it without hallucinations, without mistakes. Where would you suggest they begin, assuming they don't necessarily have access to the same kind of dev team that you did to put yours together?
Well, I would say really depends how much content you have. If you don't have quite a bit of content, people are not going to use this. If you strictly say it's only about my content, yourself, no matter who you are, if it's only about my content, you're going to get very little usage. Because what happens? People get bored. And nobody has that much content. I mean, I have a lot of content, but it goes beyond my content. It studies my view of other content as well. So that's one reason. See, my original goal was to answer 80% of the questions that were asked to me about 80% as well as me. That was my goal. This is way beyond that. It's way better than, if that's all it did, looking back on it, it'd be boring. It's not enough. People have so many different questions from so many different directions, and you can't control what they want to ask. I mean, you can ask whatever you want to ask. Now, my bot, if you ask it, who is Donald Trump, it'll say, I don't know. It doesn't answer medical questions or politics or all that. So you have to program in that. So anyway, it's kind of it's a lot more of a challenge than you think. The people I know that have done this, that don't have a huge amount of content, it's pretty much a massive who cares.
Would there be a value in sort of a super bot, like not only put all of your work in it, all of Drucker's work in it, all of Bob Cialdini's work in it, and pick 20 other thought leaders? I mean, obviously there'd be a lot of good information in there, but would the ultimate advice just be mishmash, do you think?
Well, that's the problem. Okay, you say, here's 20 thought leaders. You say, okay, what is leadership? All right, well, it's got 20 answers. That's back to the question of bias. Who tells it which answer to prefer? That's it. So there's nothing wrong with your idea. The reality is, though, it doesn't have judgment. It would have to be somehow superior to all these people collectively, and it's not. So that's why, like I say, my bot, you're getting my version of an answer, or what it thinks as best it can would be my version of the answer. That's what I wasn't planning on. What I wasn't planning on is it being able to study the world through my perspective as if I read this many books and answer the question almost exactly like I would, which it does most of the time. That's what's amazing. That question you asked me, nobody ever asked me that question in my whole life. Nobody ever asked me that question. That's a very reasonable question, but nobody ever asked me. I never thought about it from that perspective. Well, it can answer better than me.
I want to be respectful of your time, Marshall, and this has been great. It could go on for hours, I think, but where can people find you and find MarshallBot?
Well, just go to Marshall Goldsmith with 2 L's, marshallgoldsmith.ai. It's all free, right? And it's not available in multiple languages yet, but it will be soon. You can also go to, for example, coaching.com. Coaching.com has 33 of my videos available for free. My website has lots of stuff for free. YouTube has lots of stuff for free. And my goal is to give away everything I know to as many people as I can. And, I'm 75 in the limited time I have left to do it. And by the way, I live in Nashville, and all the people listening, as I invited you, hey, if you're in Nashville, I take a walk every day. I invite everybody that I talk to, come visit. I enjoy that. I go for a walk anyway. We go for a walk together, or send me an email, marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. I am not the most difficult person in the world to find.
Good to know. Marshall, thanks so much for being on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.